What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of 100 Yards Football Sports Talk Radio. I'm your host and producer this afternoon, Logan Landers, and join me here this afternoon to talk about the 2025 NFL Draft prospect, Malaki Starks, defensive back coming out of UGA. Help me out today is Brian LaBelle. Brian, let's talk about this impressive prospect who we know a lot, being from Georgia, being in the state, and them just being right there between the hedges out there in Athens. So a very impressive player, went to a local high school here in North Georgia, and a lot of the faithful down here in the Peach State love him. But tell the people out there why, if they're outside the Southeast, why they need to look at this guy in the upcoming NFL draft.
Well, how much tape he has in primetime, I feel like you kind of have to be under a rock to not have seen him, even if you're not in the Southeast, because, Georgia's been nothing but meaningful in primetime football, the last 3 years now. You can go watch the Texas tape, either game, turn it on. It's pretty good. Clemson tape, probably a little bit better. He had a really good game against Ole Miss. I know they lost that game. Played decently against Alabama. Second half, obviously, we don't worry about that first half tape. If you're a Georgia fan, go ahead and burn that. But he's an All-American. What he was able to do on the field is production. He was an anchor on one of the best defenses in college football for a couple years, and now it's time for him to go pro. And someone's going to get a steal with him because he's a safety. It's an undervalued position in the NFL. And, everyone's talking about the defensive ends in this class and the linebackers, but man, dude, Starks can play.
Yeah, he's produced every year he's been at Georgia. He came in 2022, and he just got better every single year. His freshman season was phenomenal. He had 69 total tackles on the year, 2 picks. Played multiple positions early on as well, right? He wasn't just a safety, but he can also do some good work there. Being a starter as a freshman on a good team like Georgia, that's already tough enough. So the fact that he's able to do that, he led the team in defensive snaps played as well as freshman year. So that was just kind of an appetizer. And then we saw the last 2 years, what the team did and how he improved as a player out there in that safety position. But he's a staunch tackler, right? You don't see him whiff on tackles much, which I feel like a lot of guys in the league do, not just in college but also in the pros. But I don't see this guy, arm tackling just off to the side. He's one of those who he's going to get low, he's going to bring you up off your feet, and he's going to slam you to the ground. And that's why he's made such a good impact for this Bulldogs team and defense, who's had, it feels like, half their roster already drafted to either the Eagles or somewhere else in the NFL currently. But he comes in around 6'1", 205, so he's a good size already, good weight. You see he's more of a lean build, but he's got some muscle to him. But he can do pretty much most of what you ask for him. There's not a whole lot of weaknesses in his game. Obviously, when you get drafted, when you go to a highly prestigious school like Georgia, who's had like you said, just a tough defense over the last couple of seasons since he's been here. Like I said, he's produced against big teams, big game times as well. If it's a national championship, if it's an SEC championship, it feels like he's always on the field. You always kind of see him putting in some good work. And like I said, he had some good film overall this year. Like I said, against Texas, he did great. In Notre Dame, tough game against Notre Dame, but that was a tough one there just because their starting quarterback was out, and that was a really good team. Obviously, Notre Dame, they made it all the way to the finals. But honestly, when you look at it stats wise, it was that game against Georgia Tech. But how could it not though? 8 overtimes. I think people forget about that insane game against their rivals. He had 10 tackles, all in all, and that one 6 solos, 4 of those being assisted. But he's just a phenomenal player, I think. And like I said, plays against some of the best competition, and it clearly shows.
Like what you said earlier, as far as his tackling, he doesn't shy from contact. And usually when your safety has that many tackles, it's kind of a bad indicator for your defense. Like, if your safety's having to make a lot of tackles, that means running backs and guys are getting the next level. But he plays at the line of scrimmage a lot. He comes up and he makes plays. He's a tweener role. He can play over the top. He's very, very good doing that. He's got good he's really good at turning around and spotting the football. Pass breakups, he's very good at that. The interceptions weren't great, and everyone, you got to get more interceptions. But that sometimes that just doesn't happen. Sometimes guys don't target you. He comes up in line of scrimmage. He plays man-to-man. There was a lot of times where he's on the outside. He's in the slot. Georgia put him everywhere. He was all over them. The only thing they didn't do was put his hand in the dirt and tell him to go rush the quarterback. other than that, he was everywhere. And I know the term, I think it's a nickel, a money back is
Mm-hmm.
what Buda Baker was for Arizona. And I think he's prototypical of that because Buda was doing everything. You know, he's not the biggest guy in the world. Buda Baker wasn't either, but he's got, like you said, he's got good size for his position. He's a great tackler. He's very, very good in the open field. A team's going to get a steal with him, and he could fill realistically, depending on who's hurt or what you need, he could fill 3 positions for you almost on any given, really any given series on defense.
The thing too that we haven't talked about, I feel like just because we've been culminating for it, is his speed. I
Yeah.
mean, this might be one of the fastest guys in the draft, bar none. A 4.340 verified, it's clocked. That's what it is. I mean, I mean, it's safe. I think he's one of the best run defense guys in the game coming into this draft. It doesn't matter what position it is. You put Malaki up there, he's going to stuff the run. There's a lot. I think this is kind of working out perfectly for him too, Brian, because we saw kind of a resurgence in the running back this past season.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we saw obviously with Saquon what he did with Derrick Henry, with Bijan Robinson here in Atlanta, a bunch of other, great talented guys as well. We're seeing a lot more carries from the running backs than feels like in years past, where it was very much passive. It feels like this year took more of a better approach with running.
Yeah.
But man, if you could get him on your defense and you go up against any of those big name guys, he is definitely someone that you can just easily throw in there and say, all right, kid, go to work, get that speed rolling. And we know you can do your best to get some tackles on these big guys, but he's just so quick. He's athletic. And that's what you love. Like I said, the interceptions might not be, the highest number, but that's always kind of a tough, skill and a tough stat to have. Like I said, sometimes they might not throw your way.
Yeah.
And with a guy who can jump out the gym, who's got great speed, who's got a good change of direction, well, if he gets turned around, he's not going to be turned around for long. He can make up that speed, which is tough for guys to do, but he's got the long legs. He's 6'1". He has that nice stride. So there's reasons why his interceptions weren't very high, because guys weren't throwing his side. And if he wasn't getting it picked off, he was swatting out the air, because he still can get some really good passes defended on the year. This past year, he had, I believe, just 3. But like you said, most of the time he's just making sure guys aren't catching the ball. I wish there was some stat for that, other than pass breakups. But the ability he has to negate big name players is impressive enough. And there's a lot of more, great things we can say about this guy. But I mean, he showed up in the big games. He's got good athleticism. He's got good hands. He's got great speed. He can stuff the run. He's a good pass defender. I mean, what else do you need from him?
Yeah, like you were saying with the running backs, a lot of teams are going to go 2 running backs. So they're going to have a running back that can be it's a 4th or 5th receiver on the field at all times now. Like Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs with Detroit was spectacular with that.
Yep.
And it's sort of like if you have a guy like Starks who can say, hey, listen, if he's on a wheel, if he runs out in the flat, if he goes out wide, like you got him. And I feel confident putting you on him one-on-one or in a situation where, hey, he's going to be in your zone and your flat, whatever you're at. I mean, Starks did everything well. There's nothing he does poorly. His 4.35 speed. Typically, you look at a guy. Okay, he's a track star. He wants to play DB. He doesn't shy from contact though. It's almost like you watch some of the film. It's like he wants to go hit somebody, which is kind of a lost art in the league now because no one wants to get fined and the penalties, whatever. That's a whole different conversation. But I mean, I think what you were saying with the coverage stuff. I know the PBUs weren't necessarily there, and I know the interceptions. I mentioned that earlier, but Pro Football Focus he's got a really good coverage grade. A lot of the stuff, like there's overthrows, you're like, oh, what is the quarterback doing there? It's like, it's almost a throwaway because he can't put it underneath because Starks is going to pick it off. And, you just got to kind of overthrow the guy or kind of just put it where, yeah, it's either a throwaway or my guy can only catch it. And a lot of times it's going to be a throwaway because Starks is just undercutting tight ends, wide receivers. It didn't really matter because he was spectacular.
I think with all the great talent we've seen come out of Georgia, and it was just a joke for a while of Philadelphia drafted all these dudes, but we saw it worked, and that was even without one of their players being out for the Super Bowl. It still worked, and that helped in turn a lot of these players from Georgia because they said, "Oh, hey, a lot of these guys were big time talents here in the drumming of the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, especially on defense." And I mean, Malaki was already impressive enough. I think that's going to also bump his draft stock even more. But man, there's a lot of great things to say about this young guy, and He's just another player that's going to go more than likely first round, if I had to guess, um, off that Kirby Smart defense. Which I don't even know what the number's at now, Brian, but it's got to be what feels like just 50 first round picks alone that he's
It's
had. My
Saban-esque.
God.
They're approaching like Alabama Nick Saban numbers when they went
Yeah.
on that tear. Yeah.
Yeah, they're if they haven't surpassed it already, they're getting
Yeah.
very close. And like I said, that's the thing too is just that Georgia team this year. Their offense took a step back. That's
Yeah.
for sure. But their defense was still elite, and their defense, took them, to a very good season still. Yeah, they didn't win a championship, but they were still a contender. So I mean that's just how it was. And Malaki was a big factor in the seasons that he had, and he's going to be missed in Athens, man. I know that they're going to miss him playing safety back there, but man, I think he's going to shine in the NFL. But Brian, any final thoughts you have on Malaki Starks before we're in today's show?
If he's not an early first round pick, top 15 picks or so, I think he's going to be a steal. I think someone, if you get him in the back end of the first round, he's just, with everything he can do, you can plug and play. Obviously, the only question mark for guys like this that can, do 3, 4, 5 things on your defense really well is, hey, sometimes I just need you to do one thing really well. You know what I mean? I think Jabril Peppers was an example of that when he was at Michigan. He could do everything really well, but it's almost like, hey, do one thing really well. I think coverage and speed are his two best things, but he's no pun intended, he's a dog. He's an absolute dog, and he's going to be a steal for whoever ends up getting him.
Yeah, I think he would love to stay in Georgia, and if Falcons are there, I'm just saying, I would pick him up. Guy who went to Jefferson High School, had his whole family, was around the area. His cousin, who was a high school star running back, looked up to him. Played, like I said, played track, played basketball, played football. Just a hell of an athlete. Great family genes as well. Loved the Georgia area. That's why he stayed in Athens. And if he comes to Atlanta, I'm just saying, Falcons. I know you got some holes to plug, but I would be all right with it if you pick him up. But wherever he goes, I'm excited to see where he lands, because he's going to make a big impact on whoever picks him up, and I think he's going to be a star in the making in the league, and definitely one of the next big time safeties that you're going to see in the next 2, 3, 5 years. I think full heartedly that Malaki will be up there as one of the next kind of young guns in the NFL. But I'm excited to see where he goes, Brian. I think he's going to make a big impact, and going to miss him in Athens, but I think that he's going to do great things in the league. But for Brian LaBelle today, I've been your host and producer, Logan Landis. Once again, if you enjoyed the episode, please like, follow, share, and subscribe. Facebook and YouTube. Also go and download our podcast every single week as well. Until next time, we'll see you guys again on another live NFL draft.